Hey guys, Brassfax here. For a very long time in much of this channel's history, there has been a sort of quest to find the perfect civilian laser aiming module for night vision. Something that wasn't just an early 2000s PCB board with a 10x upcharge and a plastic clamshell housing, but also wasn't a no-expense design like the Mole. Surprisingly, while there were solid attempts at this, the DIRV, CTF1 and 2, Steiner D2, and a couple more, the biggest push in this space was a ton of fly-by-night Chinese companies with bootlegs designed zonked off their ass with unrestricted full-powered lasers, allowing them to approximate the power levels of DoD lasers like the PEC-15 and, well, the other PEC-15. Well, the first couple of generations of these things, quite frankly, sucked a pretty large amount of ass. They rapidly kept one-upping each other with progressively better and better lasers, resulting in an arm race of sorts to be the first to make that perfect budget laser. However, right as the race started to get good, it ended with the Holosun Iris. V-cell emitter, allowing the illuminator to approximate performance previously reserved to $3,000 plus units like MAL or RAID XC, but with a price tag of $800 while being prolifically available right now. Most importantly though, unlike basically all lasers we'll be talking about today, as well as some that we won't be, Holosun has a track record of quick support turnaround time, generous replacement policies, repairs, and more. However, the Holosun Iris is good, but it's not perfect. And because the Holosun is forced to play by the rules set by the FDA, because they do operate in America, these Chinese lasers still can compete on power level, something very important, feature set, and price tag. So that's the video. November 2025, check on all these China lasers and how they compare to each other and the wider market, and if any of them are worth picking up. Real quick before getting started, I have reviewed the bulk of these lasers with high round count long-term reviews. So while quick iteration means these are all technically out of date, they're also only minorly out of date because they only change like one or two things on these devices, every 6 months. This video is sponsored by Venture Surplus. While you can normally get a hefty discount by simply using my code, Venture is taking it a step further with a weekly holiday discount that's divided up into phases. Each phase has a kind of category, and as the weeks go on, you can buy from different categories at significantly higher discount rates. Last week was phase 1, this week, if you're watching live, phase 2. The big thing in phase 2 that really stuck out to me is the full wool boonie hat. These things are solid and I've been adding them to a lot of my kit, and I think you've probably seen me wear these quite regularly over the last year, from matches all the way to training. So go ahead, check out the website, I'm sure you'll find something interesting on sale, and if you don't, remember, second of many phases that'll be rolling out about bi-weekly. Check back in a week or two. I'm personally waiting for phase 3 and 4 to snag both a silt pack and a waffle topper, and maybe another USGI bandolier, my second favorite surplus item. Alright, thanks Venture, back to the video. Okay, let's start with what is essentially a non-starter to kind of get it out of the way. Somogear. They kicked off this whole Chinese laser arms race back with the PEC-15 knockoff. Mine ultimately broke when the physical body shattered during airsoft of all things, which ended up being a reoccurring theme as basically everyone in my group that bought one of these had theirs not make it past 1,000 rounds or so.
I'm a somosexual.
Somosexual? And what's going on?
It's just turning off every shot. God hates somosexuals.
Somogear tried to rectify this with the all-body metal Engao clone at around $500, which I went ahead and bought. Unfortunately, right out of the box, it not only did not mount to 1913 rails, their solution, instead of just taking it back and fixing it, was sending me a piece of plastic to shim it, which of course didn't work. Why would that work? That's okay, whatever. Because the RMA process involves sending these things back to the Chinese mainland, where they will likely just throw it in a landfill, Somogear is actually incredibly reluctant to actually RMA anything. First with my PEC-15, where they refused to do anything other than give me 20% discount codes, and then with the Engao, which I was very persistent of as I didn't actually break the device. They sent me a non-functional one, and they finally, after like a month, relented and gave me an RMA slip, and then proceeded to ghost me and not even send it back. So, cool, I'm out, what is that, like $800 now? Very ironic given I probably sold more Somogears than perhaps anyone else. This is the M6TR provided to me from Laserspeed. It's basically the exact same thing as the M6TR, which I've previously bought and reviewed, and that is probably one of my go-to recommendations for a solid full power laser at about $1,000. My M6TR is just shy of the 5,000 round mark, with 1,500 of that being simulated FA fire. And the device electronically has held up just fine, as well as the mechanism. The biggest issue with these is the inherent amount of wandering zero, which all lasers have, but this one, if I had to pull a number straight out of my butthole, is maybe about 20% more than your D-balls or your mols. So acceptable, but barely. But hey, it's $1,000 for full power goodness. We'll take it, or at least some of us will. The M6TR-V is thus a bit of an odd duckling. It's trading its full power emitter for a civilian legal one, and the illuminator for a V-cell one. So we're matching the Halcyon Iris configuration almost exactly. So it's still something capable of pushing IR out to about 200 to 300 yards, maybe even more. But the lack of full power means we're going to get wrecked with photonic barriers, very bright moonlit nights, or perhaps in urban settings where there's a lot of light splash all around, and it's actually difficult to push a laser or illuminator into a dark area. So that's just restating photonic barriers, but you get the idea. Congrats, Laserspeed, on trying to go legit, but sorry, we don't love you for your personality. We love you for your blatant disregard for American laws. So that's why I never really bothered buying the base M6TR-V when the Iris and the full M6TR exists. However, there is a newer version which allows you to buy it with the TR1 light, which only works on the V model right now. You can't transplant it to the older full powers. This makes the M6TR-V, take a shot every time I say M6TR-V, a 4-in-1 unit. So we get IR illuminator, Viz laser, and a white light. The flashlight is nothing special, approximating the brightness level of a TLR7 brightness, so the streamlight, so it's quite weak and anemic. And unfortunately, the tape switch which comes with this partially falls out under recoil, making it kind of non-functional. Oh, and mine shipped with a sort of cracked lens, or there's something in the lens itself. And worst of all, the light requires a very specific position that isn't all the way tight, otherwise it tends to flicker and every once in a while not even come on all the way. So this is what we call in the business a giant pile of crap. It's worth noting that Hop's unit works just fine, and I've obviously been through several M6TRs at this point, so I think that mostly just speaks to really bad luck or the fact that these units are still ultimately a made-in-China type device in the full sense of the phrase, despite their upper-end pricing. This is the RIX Tactical RIP 3C. What a awful name. At first, and then second and third glance, I think it's pretty clear this is a private label M6TR-V, and the performance of the light and the IR match exactly. It's the same unit under the hood. RIP, I think, RIP is their name? Or RIX is their name, right? RIX wanted to send me one, so I figured actually this was a good way to see if they managed to fix any of the issues that I had with the M6TR-V back before I realized Hop's one was working just fine, and thus we've sort of ended up with a sample set of 3. So here we are. It comes with an improved switch, which doesn't fly out under recoil, despite the plug-ussy sort of being exactly the same dimensionally. Unfortunately, it just turns off under recoil, requiring you to let off the button and repress. So like with the M6TR-V, switching to a mod button fixes the issue, so the end result is the same. Throw the tape switch away, buy a mod button like an adult. The rear end is actually a huge improvement. I don't usually care that much about mode selector ergonomics. Certainly nice if it's good, but it's an admin task most of the time, and I can thus deal with a clunky selector. But because this is a 4-in-1 unit, I want and need the ability to go from IR to white light rapidly, because you still want the ability to emergency use your white light if things go tits up with night vision. Usually this is handled by a Viz override triple tap, but they don't have that here, so this quick adjustment will have to do in its place. This unit really needs a Viz override though. Most importantly, with the RIP, you can... I really don't like that name. Most importantly, with the RIP, you can crank the light all the way, properly tight on, and the device doesn't flicker. So, honestly, solid device. I actually quite like this. Only my biggest complaint, once again, is that I wish this was the full power version, right? Next up, the RovyVon GL5. This has probably been my biggest financial blunder, short of trying out belt feds. I've bought a GL4, the GL4 IRH, the GL4 version 2, and now the GL5, which is the only unit RovyVon has sent me thus far. The GL5 is basically just a higher lumen version of the 4 series and also has a flush mount, emitter housing, and a side battery mount instead of a forward mounted one at the cost of $500 over the previous $400. These are just straight up garbage on rifles with their insane level of flood. Just don't do it.
Oh my god, I can't see past the smoke.
But they are really good options for PDWs, being one of the few ways to get IR lasers, IR illuminators, Viz laser, and a white light on a PDW handgun-ish setup without spending 1,200 doll hairs for a Surefire XVL2, which itself has very questionable durabilities, as I've seen 2 of them break under recoil. Unfortunately, almost a year later, the GL series is still a complete gamble if you're actually able to mount these to your weapon of choice. While it has gotten better, most of the time they are simply too tight and will require a hammer to attach, which visibly damages the latch every time you do it, or they're just way too loose and will not hold zero. I've been in the way too loose camp with this Flux Raider, but it also has issues with some of my rifles. No, the included spacer recoil lugs that come with the newest versions do not help, because that's not how clamps work. Right as I'm working on this script, hilariously, RovyVon finally just made a adjustable crossbolt version of the GL5. So yeah, that's probably the one you should buy. I just wish they started there. SMS HFXC. This is what everyone points to when they're like, lasers should really only cost $500 or less, with this being significantly less at about $200-$350 depending on when you can get it. And I used to get DMs about this thing probably once every 48 hours for like 3 months straight. But it don't matter, because, while surprisingly durable for blunt impacts, this thing just has multiple feet of wandering zero induced by recoil. And on my belt fed, it was like completely useless in short order, being multiple targets off target. I put it on my TP9 because I think maybe a belt fed is slightly unfair, especially for a budget device, and in about 500 rounds, the laser had wandered 3/4 of the way away from the center aiming point towards the EOTech's outer ring. So, yeah, I don't know. $350 plus ammo in the trash for a 30-second segment. But we're not done with SMS yet. This is the newly released Trinity. I have 2 of them. I bought the first one for $350 for pre-order, and then weirdly enough, as that one just arrived, they requested to send me a second one after already telling them I bought one. Their claim was the initial run had some slight issues, hence here you go, a second one. Not entirely sure if that's valid, or this is just going to be a cherry-picked reviewer model. I don't know. For this specific video, I shot exactly 1,000 rounds through an AK with the pre-order model, not the one they sent me. My initial impressions are that this ergonomically kind of slaps. Very good form factor, being much taller than it is wide, fitting on a lot of non-standard systems. Very good adjustment slider, though the lockout button, absolutely get rid of that. And the mode selector is kind of tastefully hidden off to the side. And once you jailbreak it out of safe mode, you're going to get piss-roaring hot Viz, IR, and illuminator, brighter than most mid-generation military lasers like the PEC-15s. It also has a power selector on the side for an actual power level adjustment. Pretty cool. After my initial, very limited test, I have detected some wandering zero roughly on the same tier as the M6TR, but to be frank, I have also not subjected it to the same volume of fire, bumps, drops, and more that all the other lasers discussed thus far have received. It also has the obnoxiously tiny little zero adjustment turrets, and the laser itself seems ever so slightly misaligned from the IR laser. Not so bad that you're really going to notice it, but it is something to be aware of. With the short-term nature of this review, I would not consider this as a green light quite yet. Just know we're off to a promising start. I'll be doing a much more in-depth review here very shortly with a much higher round count on both models and kind of see how they hold up. Finally, I got my hands on one of these Mark V invisible sights, aka another NGAL clone, which is fine, I guess. It's a small, nice form factor, but honestly, I'm not sure why we keep copying NGALs. Ignoring the people that slobber the DoD's dick, the NGALs are actually kind of shit ergonomic design-wise. It's just a small PEC-15. Anyways, that aside, over the years, I've heard that invisible sights have a pretty stellar level of anecdotal reports. Very durable, full power, hold zero better than some legit lasers. On one hand, cool. On the other hand, I mean, how many times have we heard that before? Typically, I wouldn't really care for reviewing this, but the Mark V is now shipping from Hong Kong directly to an American distributor. So warranties, sales, and more are all now handled stateside, which is actually amazing. As someone that's had to deal with a huge smorgasbord of these things and RMAing them, trust me, it's a big deal that they're moving stuff to the United States. So as long as they can get the supply side stuff figured out, I think this is a really promising sign. Forgive me though, I didn't really want to be a guinea pig here and drop $1,000, and this video is already project creeped into oblivion, so I did ask for a free review model. Out of the box, the Mark V is solid. Much better detents, plug, focus ring, and more compared to the Somogear and Galaxy. This being the last unit I'll be talking about today, I did do a submersion test for all units except the HFXC into a pot of water for 30 minutes, and then another 30 minutes because I was doing really well in a Battlefield 6 match and those Conquest games drag on. All the units did relatively well in the submersion test, except the HFXC, because that was very clearly drowning immediately as a bunch of bubbles came out of it, and then pulling it out, it was clear the lens was beginning to fill up with water. Anyways, back to the invisible sight. Downrange performance, exactly what we've come to expect with post-COVID lasers, with very crisp emissions that are, of course, once again, at rip-roaring power levels. The only real downside is my device seems to stick on, likely the result of a double-click input delay being programmed a hair too aggressively. Worth noting, the tape switch I've been using on this device has been used a lot, both on my D-balls, my PEC, and a number of other devices, and I've never had this occur, so I'm pretty sure this is in fact the laser itself. Ultimately though, the real question is, 0. Does it hold it? Yes, so far. This one is at 1200 rounds on a 5.56 gun, and it's doing alright. Reminds me of how my D-ball or PEC 15 feel in terms of zero retention, which is what actually I normally have on this gun. Small amounts of zero shift and a good bash will cause a zero to slip a good bit more, but that slip will reset back to the sort of zero with a shot. Much like the Trinity SMS, I will be rocking this thing long term, and you can expect a follow-up. Alright, that's the show. This, more than anything, is a good example of a sample set and something that you should build in an overall opinion on if you're going to buy one of these lasers. Time and time again, a lot of these end up just turning out to be complete crap, and then they pull one over your head and be like, hey look, we fixed it, and it turns out they did not in fact fix it. So buyer beware here. If you want me to do the thinking for you, this is what I plan on doing. While I suspect I have a limit, I'm ultimately going to get rid of my M6TR-V, even after RMAing it, not because I don't trust a fixed one, but because Rix just seems better in all regards, and I'll be using that as a useful laser for my review guns. I'm not keeping both because I really only care for full power performance if I'm going to get a Chinese laser. If I wanted a Civ Legal one, I'd buy a second Iris or wait for the Iris 4, which, both of which I'm doing. The RovyVon, while once again quite sturdy for the price, is DQ'd on the QD mount alone for the devices I want to use it with. One day perhaps I'll suck it up and buy the Crossbolt GL5, but today is not that day. HFXC, big surprise, not sticking around either because they don't work. Oh my god, stop recommending these. The full power M6TR laser speed is my current go-to recommendation for those that want full power performance, but the Trinity and Mark V are in strong contentions to offer pretty compelling alternatives. The SMS Trinity is just so much better ergonomically, and the Mark V, with its domestic retail and support, though I question how long that's going to last with the existence of the FDA, both offer pretty compelling alternatives. But once again, these last two are very early on in the review process, and I'd recommend caution. No need to be a guinea pig, it's kind of my job, right? Alright, that's it. Thanks for watching. See you guys later.
Oh, hello. Oh, hello. Hello. Good morning. Yes. Good morning. Who's my old girl?